time to start talking about using pictures in InDesign. Let's start at the beginning. How to get our images onto our InDesign page. Fortunately, InDesign makes it really easy. I'm going to open my Java Code magazine file from my graphics exercise files. And I want to put a picture right here in this empty graphics frame. I'll show you 3 ways to put pictures into frames. First, go to the File menu and choose Place. Or press Command D or Control D on Windows. We're going to select an image out of the links folder, also in the exercise files. In this case, I'm going to select this TIFF file. When I click Open, it will show me some import options, because I have turned on the Show Import Options checkbox. If that's off, it'll simply import the image. In this case, it's on, so I click Open, and I stick import options for this image. It shows me a preview of the image, and it gives me some information about it. For example, the clipping path checkbox is grayed out, so I know that there's no clipping path built into this image. We'll talk about alpha transparency in a later movie in this chapter, but for right now, I'll go ahead and click OK, and InDesign loads the place cursor. This cursor is very interesting because it lets me place the image anywhere I want on my page. Watch the cursor carefully. If I move it over on top of an area where there's no frame, I get one kind of cursor, but if I move on top of a frame that's empty, it changes slightly. And this change of the icon tells me that this picture is going to go inside this frame. I happen to know in this document that there are 3 text frames on top of this one frame, so I'm going to click in between the text frames here in this little gutter between the columns, and that lets me put the picture into that frame. I simply click, and the image is placed into the frame. Now let's import another image using a different technique. I'm going to use the Option Page Up or the Alt Page Up on Windows to move to the previous spread, and I'm going to place a new image inside this background frame. But in this case, I'm going to use drag and drop. InDesign is very drag and droppable, so I'm going to use the Application Switcher, which on Mac is Command Tab, or on Windows it's Alt Tab, to go back to my Finder. And I'll open my Links folder, and I'm going to import this file, this grayscale image here, simply by clicking, dragging, and dropping onto the frame. Now here too, before I let go of the mouse button, pay attention to the cursor. If the cursor has little parentheses around it, it means that the image is going to go into an empty frame. If I move the cursor up here, the cursor changes a little bit, and this one tells me it's going to create a new frame and place the picture into it. Very, very clever. In this case, I'm going to put it into this frame in my template. I let go of the mouse button, and it drops right in there, even without switching applications. Okay, now let's go back to InDesign and look at how to import images a third way. I'll use the Option Page Up or Alt Page Up on Windows to move to the previous spread, and now I want to fill in these 3 frames in my template. How am I going to do that? In this case, I'll use Bridge. Bridge is an asset manager that comes with the Creative Suite, so I'll switch over to Bridge. I'll look in my Links folder, and I'll see all the little thumbnails of my images in my Links folder. In this case, I'm going to grab 3 of these. I'll grab those coffee beans, that little set over here. I'm holding on the Command key or Control on Windows to select more than one object at the same time, and then I'll grab the coffee press. I've got 3 images up here. Notice it gives me a preview, and if I'm not exactly sure in Bridge if this is just the right image I want, I can actually click on that image, and while the mouse button is held down, move around the image, and that shows me a close-up of that. Very, very clever feature in Bridge cs3, which lets me use a loop to zoom in on a portion of the image. Anyway, these are the images that I want, so I'm going to move them into InDesign. I'll minimize Bridge by clicking on the Minimize button up here, and I'll simply drag them over onto my layout. Now in this case, I dragged into an area where there's no frames, but nothing happened. Why? Well, let's go back to InDesign and check it out. I'll click on InDesign, and then we'll see that it loaded the place cursor for me. Because I had multiple images selected, it loaded 3 images, all 3 of those images, into my place cursor. And you see the little number 3 there? That says how many images are loaded in the place cursor. Now I can rotate through those with the arrow keys on my keyboard. If I hit the down arrow, it switches to the next image, hit it again, switch to the next image, and I can rotate through those to get just the image I want to place. In this case, I'll place those coffee beans by clicking on top of this empty frame. Now I'll go over here and click on the next one, and I'll go over here and click on the next one. And that's it. All 3 images placed very quickly in rapid succession. This is a new feature in CS3, and it's very, very slick. The ability to place more than one image at the same time by loading up the place cursor with a bunch of files. Note that as I'm talking about importing images, I'm not talking about how to copy and paste images into InDesign. While I will discuss copy and paste between InDesign and Illustrator later in this chapter, I strongly urge you not to copy images from Photoshop or any other program other than Illustrator into InDesign. And there's a number of technical reasons for this, but suffice it to say that it's a rarely good idea. But, however you choose to import your images, the bridge, the drag and drop, the place command, InDesign tries to be as flexible as possible. And this is especially true when it comes to what file formats you can use. Now, InDesign supports all the regulars, TIFF, JPEG, PDF, and so on, but it also supports native PSD files, that's actual Photoshop files, even if there's layers in there, and native Illustrator files. In later movies, I'll talk about some of the advantages of using native PSD files, but first, I need to talk about importing a very special kind of image, importing a native InDesign file into another InDesign file, and that's what I'm talking about in the next movie. Let's say you've laid out an ad or a coupon or something, and now you want to incorporate that into another InDesign file. You need to export it as a PDF file first, right? Not necessarily. Instead, InDesign CS3 lets you import an InDesign file right onto your page. Let me show you what I mean. I've got the JavaCo magazine document open, and I'm going to go to the next spread by going to Layout, Next Spread, and let's say I'm a designer that's tasked with laying out this ad. So I'm going to select all of those objects, and I'm going to cut them to the clipboard, and I'm going to create a new document and paste them on. I'll go to File, New Document, and Paste. Now, why don't I make some changes here just so you see what's going on. I'll move this over here, and I'll move this image down there. Why don't I change this to something like 50%? Okay, just something like that. Now I'm going to save this document to my desktop. File, Save As. I'll call it My Ad. You can call it anything you want, really. But I'll click Save, and now I've got an InDesign document saved to my desktop. I'll go place that in my magazine. How do I place an InDesign file? The same way I place any other kind of image. File, Place. I'll go to the desktop, choose my InDesign file, and click Open. It loads the place cursor as though it were an image. I'll simply click, and it creates a frame and imports that file. I'll use the selection tool to move the graphic around until it's in the position I want. And voila, I'm done. Now, InDesign has a really cool feature that I'll be talking about in more detail in a later movie called Edit Original. All I do is select that graphic, go to Edit, Edit Original, and it opens the original file, in this case, the original InDesign file. If I make a change to my InDesign file, for example, I'll change this to maybe 20% off, and I'll change this to coffee, let's say, something like that. All I have to do is save, Command S for save, go back to my JavaCo magazine. You'll see that immediately it updates. It's like magic. There's a direct link from one InDesign file to the next. InDesign treats imported InDesign files just as it does any other kind of image. They're like placed images, and they print great, and they can really optimize your workflow efficiency. When you import a picture into an InDesign document using Place or by dragging a file in from disk, InDesign doesn't actually embed the image into your document. Instead, you get a thumbnail preview of the image and a link to the file on disk. This happens with any kind of image file, whether it's a PDF or a JPEG or a TIFF or whatever. That's why when I double-click on this JavaCo sheet document, I get an error. And the error says I've got a missing link and a modified link. Now you can choose Fix Links automatically, but I'm going to choose Don't Fix so I can explain the situation carefully. Whenever you get an error, the Links panel opens automatically for you. If you don't see the Links panel, you can always simply click on the Links icon to open that panel. In the Links panel, I see two icons, the missing icon and the modified icon. That tells me that this image is missing. InDesign cannot find that file on disk. And this image has been modified since the last time I opened this InDesign document. Let's handle the missing one first. I'll click on the missing link, and then I'll click on Go to Image. This button actually takes me right to the page that has the image, it zooms in on it, and it selects it for me. Okay, so this is the image I'm looking for. To find this image on disk, or to link to a new image, I use the Relink button. I'll click on the Relink button, and it says, where's the image you're looking for? I think it's in the Links folder, so I'll double-click on that, and I'll go find it. I I can see in the title bar it's looking for this file here, DCS12. Ah, there it is. Someone changed the name slightly, so it showed up as missing. It's not missing after all. I'll click Open, and it will relink. By the way, if I use this image in multiple places in my document, I probably want to turn on Relink All Instances. This checkbox is new in CS3, and this tells InDesign to relink all the instances of this file with the new file. I'll click Open, and InDesign says, "You sure you want to do it? It has a different name." Yes, I'm sure. And it comes in, and no longer is that file missing. Now what about this modified file? I'll click on it, I'll go to it, I look at it, something must have changed since the last time I worked on this InDesign document. Now in this case, I don't need to relink to it, I simply have to update it. This button to the right says Update the image, and I won't have to go and find it on disk. I simply click the button, it re-imports it, and we're good to go. The fourth tool in the Links panel is the Edit Original button, and I'm going to be talking about that in a later movie. By the way, the features in all these buttons are replicated up here in the Links panel flyout menu. Relink, Go to Link, Update Link, etc. Let me show you a couple of other things about the Links panel. Any image that I select on my page, in this case I've used the selection tool to select this image, also gets highlighted in the Links panel. That's very handy. If I double-click on this link, it brings up the link information dialog box, which tells me information about this file. If I double-click on this link, it brings up the link information dialog box, which gives me all kinds of information about this file. I'll click Done, and this is one of my favorite things, in the flyout menu, I could choose Reveal in Finder, or on Windows it would be Reveal in Windows Explorer, or Reveal in Bridge. And this will actually launch Bridge and select the image for me. And then I can do stuff with it, like rename it, or copy it, or whatever I wanted to do. It's important that your images all be up to date in the Links panel, not missing, not modified, before you print or export your documents, or else InDesign will only be able to use the low-resolution preview, and your output may not look right. Previous movie, I talked about how images get linked to files on disk rather than getting embedded into your InDesign document. It turns out that you can embed images into your InDesign files, which can sometimes be really useful. For example, I'm going to go to my Links panel, clicking on the Links icon here, and I'll choose the squiggle pattern, and I'll go look at what that file is. Let me zoom in here with a Command 1 or Control 1 on Windows. That gives me a better view of it. I'll hit W to go into preview mode, and I can see that the squiggle pattern is this background pattern. I happen to know that that's a little 250K Illustrator file, not a big file on disk at all. And let's say I'm just tired of keeping track of that file on disk. I can embed it into my InDesign file by going to the Links panel and choosing Embed File. See that little icon here? I'll scroll down so you can see it better. That little icon means that this file is now embedded in the InDesign file. Is this an okay thing? Some folks get nervous about embedding images because this practice got a bad reputation back in the old PageMaker days, but we've come a long way since then, and embedding images really is okay, especially because you can always unembed it if you need to. How? Select it in the Links panel, go to the Links panel menu, and choose Unembed File. InDesign can actually relink to a file on disk, or if you've lost that file, maybe you've deleted it from your hard drive, no problem, InDesign can actually write a new one to disk that's exactly the same as the original. Now I'm comfortable embedding this file because it's only 250K large. That means my InDesign document is only about 250K larger than it used to be. But if I had a 50 megabyte Photoshop file, would I embed that? Probably not. That would make me kind of nervous. Generally, I'll go ahead and embed small files if it's a little 100K file, like a little logo or something. But really big files, those big Photoshop files, I'll leave those linked to my files on disk.